The desert of two suns. The desert was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. Two suns burned above the sand like angry eyes. Heat waves twisted the air, and the ground cracked under every step. Jared walked slowly, his boots sinking in the soft, red sand. His shirt was torn, lips dry, and his water bottle empty. He had been walking for 2 days, maybe more. He didn't know anymore. Time was hard to count when everything around you wanted you dead. This wasn't Earth. It was a forgotten planet at the edge of explored space, a world where his ship had crashed after being hit by a rogue asteroid. The emergency beacon was damaged, the comms dead. There were no towns, no roads, only silence and endless sand. Jared checked his pack. Only one thing remained, a small food bar wrapped in silver foil, enough for one last meal. He stared at it, hands shaking. His stomach growled like an animal trapped inside him. But he didn't eat, not yet. He wanted to wait until sunset, when the heat dropped and the night creatures came out. Suddenly, a sound cut through the wind. Soft, weak, like a small animal crying. He turned sharply, eyes scanning the dunes. Was it a trick of the wind or something real? Then he saw it. A small shape crawling across the sand, maybe 20 feet away. He blinked and stepped closer. It wasn't an animal. It was a child, but not a human child. She had pale blue skin, long white hair covered in dust, and strange silver markings on her arms. Her eyes glowed faintly, like moons trapped in her face. She was shaking, barely breathing. Jared froze, unsure what to do. She looked alien. But she didn't look dangerous. She looked dying. He slowly approached, hands up, showing he had no weapon. She didn't move, only watched him with wide, scared eyes. Then her small voice whispered, in broken English. Hungry. Jared looked at his food bar, then at the girl. She couldn't have been older than 7. Her bones stuck out from her skin. Her lips were cracked. He knelt beside her and opened the food bar. His hands trembled as he broke it in two. He gave her the bigger half. She took it slowly, like she couldn't believe it was real. Then she ate one bite at a time, chewing carefully like she had never eaten before. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she swallowed the last piece. Jared watched her in silence, hunger stabbing his own gut like a knife. But he didn't care. She reached out and touched his arm. No words, just a soft grip and a look in her eyes that he would never forget. He tried to ask her name, but before she could answer, the wind changed. It blew hot and fast, and in that instant, a bright light exploded in the sky. A beam of blue fire shot down from the clouds, and a humming noise filled the air. Jared shielded his eyes, blinking through the blinding light when he looked again. The girl was gone. No footsteps, no sound. Only a small mark in the sand where she had been. Glowing faintly, he searched around, called out, even dug into the sand. Nothing. It was like she had never been there. Was she real, or had the heat finally broken his mind? The sky returned to normal. The suns burned above, and the wind whispered like before. Jared fell to his knees, too weak to stand. He placed the tiny piece of food he had left back into his pack, untouched, but it didn't matter anymore. He had done what felt right, and in that moment, alone, hungry, and almost broken, he smiled. Years later, a sky that spoke the world had moved on. But Jared hadn't. 10 years had passed since the day he gave his last food to a strange, dying alien girl in the desert of another planet. Since then, he had returned to Earth, taken a quiet job in a repair shop near the mountain edges. People called him the ghost mechanic because he talked little and smiled even less. But no one knew the truth. No one knew that sometimes, at night, Jared still woke up with sand in his dreams and a glowing pair of alien eyes in his mind. He never told anyone, not about the girl, not about the light, not about the feeling that something had changed that day. Maybe he had saved her, maybe he hadn't. Maybe she was never real. Still, he never threw away the torn piece of the food wrapper. He kept it locked in a box, like a secret memory he didn't want to lose. Then, on a night that began like any other, the sky opened. Jared was outside fixing an old cargo drone when a blue crack split the clouds above. It didn't thunder. It didn't flash. It whispered. A glowing triangle appeared in the sky, floating without sound. 3 bright stars formed a circle around it. People in the town looked up in fear, phones in hand. Recording, shouting, guessing. But Jared froze, his eyes wide, his blood cold. It was the same symbol that had glowed in the sand where the girl had disappeared. The same shape burned into his memory like a scar, a triangle, and 3 stars. That wasn't just a message. It was a summons. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in silence, heart racing, staring at the box that held the old wrapper. Then, just before dawn, he heard something outside. Not footsteps, not machines, a soft, pulsing hum, like a quiet song playing behind the walls of the world. He opened the door and found it. A small silver cube, smooth and cold, glowing with soft blue light. No one had delivered it. No ship had landed. It had just appeared. He picked it up carefully, and the moment his hand touched it, the cube floated into the air. Light unfolded from it, shaping into a hologram. And there she was, not a child anymore. She had grown tall and graceful, her blue skin brighter, her silver markings now symbols of power. Her voice was calm, older, but still carried that same sadness he remembered. "If you are hearing this," she said, "then I found you. You gave me life when you had none to spare. You fed me when you were starving. You touched the universe in a way it has never forgotten." She paused, her glowing eyes locking into his. "Even through the message, come back," she said. "The stars remember your kindness, but not all who saw it are grateful. I have something to give, you something the future depends on." The message faded, and the cube floated down into Jared's hands again, still warm, still alive. He stood there for a long time, alone in the cold morning light. Then he looked at the stars and whispered. She remembered. Elsewhere, in deep space, a dark ship moved without sound through the void. Its surface was black like the night itself, sharp edges glowing faintly red inside. Someone watched the same message, the same girl, the same words, but he did not smile. He did not feel hope. He felt threatened. A human voice echoed from the shadows. Cold and full of hate, she called him. Then he must be erased. Ending hook. Jared thought he was remembering the past, but in truth, the past was reaching back to claim him, and far across the galaxy, a dark force was already moving. Not to thank him, but to make sure his kindness never lived long enough to matter again. The ship that shouldn't fly the cube didn't speak again. It just sat on Jared's table, glowing faintly, like it was breathing. He hadn't moved it since the message played. He just sat in silence, staring at it, like it might disappear. If he blinked outside, the wind howled across the quiet mountain town. But Jared's mind was already far away, in a desert beneath 2 suns. In the eyes of a child who never should have survived, she was alive, and she was calling him. He had promised himself he would never fly again. His ship had been left untouched. In the back of his workshop for years, it was more memory than machine. The hull was cracked, the thrusters dead. The AI core long shut down. People joked it looked like a metal coffin with wings. But that night, Jared opened the heavy door and stepped inside. The dust greeted him like an old friend, and in the still darkness, he whispered, "She needs me." He didn't sleep, he worked hands. Steady, heart unsure, piece by piece, wire by wire. He brought the dead ship back to life. He used old parts, stolen fuel, scrap electronics from drones that barely worked, and somehow it responded. The engines clicked, then rumbled. The lights flickered, then glowed. The AI voice, silent for 10 years, stuttered and spoke. Pilot. Recognized. System integrity. 37%. That was enough. Jared climbed into the seat, the cube floating beside him. He input the coordinates. It showed him numbers he didn't recognize, pointing to a sector no map recorded. The ship groaned as it lifted, metal straining. Neighbors ran outside, staring in disbelief. No one had seen a ship leave this town in a decade, but Jared didn't look back. He broke through Earth's sky and entered the dark, cold sea above, and in that moment, the stars felt close. Like they had been waiting for him to return. Hours. Past maybe days, he followed the path marked by strange signals, flashes of blue light only his ship could see. Each signal matched the symbol the girl had sent, triangle and 3 stars. He was being led, not chased, but he wasn't the only one moving through the stars. Far behind, a second ship drifted in silence, hidden under cloaking fields, inside. It sat a man in black armor, his eyes empty, his skin pale. A scar ran across his face, and a cold machine clicked at the base of his skull. He watched Jared's ship on a dark screen, tracking every jump, every signal. He's taking the bait. The man said quietly. Soon, she opened the door. And we'll go through it first. Meanwhile, Jared's ship entered orbit around a familiar planet. 2 suns hung above it, just as he remembered. The desert below glowed gold and red. But something had changed. A massive floating structure hovered over the dunes like a fortress made of glass and light. The cube lit up again, and a soft voice filled the cabin. You've returned. I didn't know if you would. Jared leaned forward. Heart pounding, Alexa, he said. The voice replied gently, yes. But not the child you remember. The ship was caught by a soft tractor beam, and it descended slowly into the fortress. No resistance, no weapons, no guards, just silence when the doors opened. Jared stepped out into a long hallway made of crystal and steel. The air felt warm. The floor pulsed gently under his boots. Then he saw her. She stood at the end of the hall, tall and graceful. Her silver markings now formed symbols he didn't understand, but her eyes. Those same glowing eyes he had once seen in the desert, they hadn't changed. She walked toward him, silent, calm, until they stood face to face. Jared tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, Alexa raised her hand and placed it gently over his heart. You gave me life, she whispered, and now I must give you something greater. Before he could ask what she meant, the walls trembled just slightly, like a warning. Alexa turned her head sharply. Sensing something beyond the walls, she looked back at Jared, her voice now serious. You weren't the only one who followed the signal. Echoes from the ash sky the walls of the fortress breathed. That's how it felt to Jared. Like the entire structure was alive, watching him. Listening, remembering. Alexa led him through a wide corridor made of smooth silver stone. Strange lights floated around them like slow-moving stars. Every step echoed like a drumbeat in his ears. He had so many questions. How did she survive? Why was she calling him now? And what had this place become? But Alexa didn't speak right. Away, she seemed tense, eyes scanning the walls, as if listening to something only she could hear. Finally, they stopped at a round chamber with a glowing floor. In the center floated a single crystal sphere, bright as the sun, but cool to thee. Touch, this is the core of the fortress, she said, her voice low. It holds memory, energy, and truth. She touched the sphere, and light poured out. Suddenly, Jared was surrounded by floating images, memories projected into the air. He saw himself 10 years younger, offering his last food to a starving child. He saw her, that same child, lying weak in the sand, then vanishing in blue light. Then the memory changed. He saw ships, alien and massive, circling her planet. He saw Sister scold, expressionless watching through screens. She was never meant to live. One of them said she was a test. Said another, a failure. Jared's hands clenched into fists. They left you to die, he whispered. Alexa nodded, voice steady but bitter. They wanted to see if emotion could survive in a hostile world when I didn't die. They called me broken, but then you came, she continued, turning to face him. You gave something they never predicted, kindness without reason. And that single moment broke everything they believed. Jared looked at her heart. Heavy? You built all this? He asked. She shook her head. I planted the idea, but others joined. Others like me thrown away, forgotten, they came to me. And we built this together. Before Jared could respond, the floor shook slightly, the lights flickered, and a deep tone echoed through the air, like the sound of something ancient waking. Alex's face darkened. They found us, she said. A screen appeared in front of them. It showed the sky above the fortress, now filled with ash-colored ships, dozens of them. Their surfaces were black and smooth, like machines grown in darkness. Jared stared at the lead ship, looked familiar. And then, a voice filled the chamber, cold and human. You broke the balance. The voice said, you taught the failed child to dream. Jared stepped forward, recognizing the voice from the shadows of his past. You, he muttered. You're one of the old commanders. The man on the screen smiled without warmth. I was, he replied, until I left Earth behind. Kindness makes people weak. It clouds judgment. It made you save a mistake. Alex's fists tightened. I am not your mistake, she snapped. I am your mirror. You fear what you see. The enemy commander ignored her. He looked at Jared with cold eyes. Return the girl, he ordered. Give us the memory seed, and we'll spare your planet. Jared didn't answer. He turned to Alexa. What's the memory seed? She opened her hand, revealing a small crystal glowing in her palm. This, she said, holds everything we've built, history, knowledge, the story of a new kind of life, if they get it. They'll wipe it all out. The voice spoke again. Last chance, human, choose survival. Or choose her and burn with her. Jared took the seed, placed it in his pocket. Then looked into the camera and said 2 words. I choose. He didn't need to say more. The screen shattered and alarms echoed through the fortress. Alexa turned to him, eyes burning. They'll come with fire, she said. But we still have one thing left. What? Jared asked. She looked upward, toward the hidden layers. Beneath the surface, a secret buried in this world, she said. A power that remembers the first kindness and the first betrayal. The sand will rise, the desert sky cracked open with fire. Enemy ships screamed down from the clouds, burning red trails across the twin suns. The fortress shuddered, its shield domes flickering like thin glass about to break. Jared stood beside Alexa on the upper platform, the wind pulling at their clothes. Around them, towers of energy buzzed and hummed, readying defenses. But he knew this wouldn't be enough. There were too many, and they were prepared for war. Alexa stared at the fleet through glowing lenses on her mask. They're targeting the core systems first. She said calmly, they want us blind. We can't let that happen, Jared replied, tightening the strap on his old chest rig. He hadn't worn it in years, not since Earth turned quiet, but now. Every piece of armor felt like a memory returning to life. Suddenly, the alarm screamed. Breach detected in Sector 5 underground chambers compromised. Alex's face went pale. That's where the children are. Without waiting, Jared ran. He didn't think, his legs just moved. Faster than fear, down stairwells, through burning corridors, past frightened workers trying to seal doors behind him. He reached the lower levels and found chaos. Smoke filled the halls and drones black. Spider-like machines crawled through the vents. They weren't killing, Not yet. They were scanning. Recording. Hunting. Jared slid behind a column, aimed his plasma cutter, and fired. The bolt hit clean. One drone fell apart in a burst of sparks, but more came, dozens, crawling like insects through every crack in the walls. From the shadows, a small alien boy ran into view, crying out. A drone leaped at him. Claws ready. Jared dove forward, tackled it midair, and crushed its core with a piece of broken pipe. He grabbed the boy and shouted, "Where are the others?" The child pointed to a locked door behind them. Inside, through the clear panel, Jared saw nearly 50 children huddled in fear. The power to the chamber was sealed shut by the fortress's emergency lockdown. Jared pulled the emergency override from his belt, connected the cables, and prayed it still worked. One spark. Then another. The door hissed open, and the children rushed out, arms raised in panic. "Follow me," he ordered. "Don't look back," as they ran through the smoke. More drones dropped from above. Jared fired again, and again, his aim sharp, his breath steady. He had no idea how he was surviving this. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was something more. They reached a lift, shaft completely dead. Jared turned to the children. "We climb, one by one." They used the side ladders, slow and scared. Jared waited at the bottom, covering them until the last child reached the top. Then he climbed too, body aching, lungs burning. When he reached the surface again, the fortress trembled hard beneath his feet. Alexa was there waiting with a rescue shuttle. The side door slid open, and Jared pushed the kids inside. She met his eyes. "You brought them all." He nodded, sweat dripping from his brow. Barely, the shuttle took off, carrying the young to safety, but the sky was still burning. And the enemy had not stopped. Alexa handed Jared a crystal keythin, and glowing with red-blue light. "This is the gate trigger," she said. "The ancient gate below the desert." "The one I told you about." Jared frowned. "You said it was dangerous." She nodded. "It is. But we don't have a choice anymore." She led him back inside. Down through the lowest chamber, lower than even the children's vaults. There, beneath the surface, was a round door made of black stone. Symbols carved deep into it glowed faintly as the key approached. "This planet has bones," Alexa whispered. "Old ones. This door is not just to a vault, it's to what sleeps inside the planet." Jared hesitated. What if it wakes up angry? Alexa didn't smile. "It will remember the one who showed kindness." She said, "It remembers everything, Jared." Took a deep breath, placed the key into the lock. The stone rumbled, and cracks of light spread across its surface like lightning frozen in time. The air grew thick, the temperature dropped, and from beyond the door, something stirred. What wakes below the door beneath the desert split open with a sound no human had ever heard before. Not metal grinding, not stone cracking. It was like the planet itself had taken a breath after holding it for 1,000 years. Jared stepped back as blue light poured from the cracks, bathing the chamber in a soft, eerie glow. Alexa stood beside him, silent. Her eyes wide not with fear, but reverence. Beyond the door, a wide tunnel stretched into blackness. Symbols on the walls lit up as they walked forward, as if sensing their presence. Every step they took echoed like thunder in a forgotten cave. "What is this place?" Jared whispered. Alexa answered without turning, "A resting place. For those who were never meant to be found." As they moved deeper, the air grew colder. Then suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast underground hall. Jared stopped, breath stolen from his lungs. Before them stood giants, tall, stone-like beings, 10 of them, lined in a perfect circle. Each one covered in crystal armor. They weren't machines, they weren't statues. They were alive, but sleeping. Alexa stepped into the center of the circle. "They are the guardians," she said, "born before my kind. Before yours, born from the planet itself. They protected the early life here. Long before the stars were mapped, Jared looked around in awe. And why did they stop? Because they were betrayed, Alexa replied, voice heavy with memory. Someone tried to use their power. Not for protection, but for control. So they slept, she said, waiting for a sign to awaken again. Jared reached into his pocket and pulled out the small memory seed, the crystal she had given him. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, as he walked closer to the center of the hall. The seed grew warmer, suddenly, without touching anything. The seed rose from his hand and floated above the ground. It split open, and a glowing thread of light shot into the air. The guardians stirred. The room trembled. A deep, layered voice echoed all around them, not from one place, but from everywhere. "You return the light," the voice said. "We remember your hand." The one that fed the dying. Jared blinked in disbelief. They remember me? Alexa stepped beside him, nodding slowly. "This planet remembers everything done in kindness," she said, "even by strangers." Suddenly, the room turned red. A violent hum filled the air. The fortress above was under attack. Alexa touched her ear, voice sharp now. Enemy forces breaching levels 6 and 7. Power systems down to 30%. The light around the Guardians grew stronger. "Do you call upon us?" the deep voice asked. "Do you offer memory in exchange for protection?" Jared didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said, "we need you." One by one, the giant's eyes opened, beams of white fire cutting through the dark. They began to move, slow at first, then, with terrifying speed, stone cracked under their steps. But their bodies didn't crumble. They were stronger than steel, and they were angry. Jared and Alexa rushed back up through the tunnel, the ground shaking beneath them as they reached the surface. The sky was filled with war. Enemy ships hovered like dark insects, firing red energy bolts at the fortress's shields. Then the Guardians emerged from Belorzing through the sand as if the planet had spit them out. The first Guardian raised its arm, crystals glowed, and with one wave, a massive energy pulse shot upward. The nearest enemy ship exploded, torn apart in a flash of light. The others tried to retreat, but it was too late. The Guardians moved with silent fury. Attacking with light, sand, and gravity itself, ships twisted mid-air, caught in invisible hands. Ripped open like paper from the lead enemy ship, a single figure watched, expressionless. The scarred human commander who had once called Jared. Weak, they woke the planet. He said to his crew. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. "We're leaving." But as he gave the order, something appeared on his screen. Not a Guardian, not Jared, something older. The planet itself had activated a defense AI buried deep in its crust. A final warning system meant for one thing: removal of invaders. A mechanical voice spoke through his ship's walls. "You were warned. The human was chosen. You were not." Then his ship went dark, engines shut down, weapons offline, trapped. The kindness that shook the stars, the desert burned with war, but the sky above it had changed. What once carried only fire and steel now echoed with something older. The footsteps of giants, the voice of a world awake, and the memory of a human act that refused to die. Jared stood at the center of the battlefield, watching as the last enemy ships tried to escape. But there was no escape, not from the Guardians, not from the truth. Beside him, Alexa raised a hand to her ear. "The command ship is still in orbit," she said. "They haven't fired in minutes." Jared narrowed his eyes. "They're not just running," he said quietly. "They're waiting." Suddenly, a light shone down from the enemy ship, a long column that reached the sand, and in it, a figure descended. It wasn't a soldier, it wasn't a machine, it was a child, a human child. No older than 10, eyes blank, face cold, body wrapped in glowing armor that seemed too big for her. Jared stepped forward, heart racing. What is? This, a hologram appeared in front of the girl. The scarred commander's face filled the image. This is my answer to your kindness, he said. A child built for obedience, not emotion. She is perfect and like the girl you saved. Alexa stepped between Jared and the girl. That child doesn't belong in war, she said sharply. She belongs in sunlight. The commander's voice twisted, bitter and hard. You were weak, he said. He made you weaker. But her? She will never cry, never doubt, never hesitate. Jared looked at the girl's face. There was no hate, no fear, only silence. Like she didn't know how to feel at all. He slowly walked toward her. Hands open, she doesn't need to be perfect, he said softly. She just needs to be free. The girl tilted her head, confused. Her hands twitched, was programmed to attack. But Jared dropped to one knee. I gave my last food to someone who was dying, he said. And that one moment changed the galaxy. You can make a choice too. The girl stepped forward, one foot, then another. The energy around her began to fade. The glowing armor cracked. And then, quietly, she whispered, I'm hungry. Jared smiled through tears. He reached into his pack and took out something wrapped in cloth. It was old, but it was still their half of a food bar. The same kind he had once given to Alexa. He offered it to the girl. She took it slowly, hands shaking, and for the first time. She smiled, high above. The enemy commander stared at his screen in silence. Then he turned and walked away. Not in anger, but in defeat. His greatest weapon had become something he could no longer control. Something he had tried to erase humanity. 1 week later. The desert was calm again. The fortress still floated in the sky, now fully repaired. The guardians had returned to the deep, their promise fulfilled. The child now called Alirin through the halls beside other children, learning to laugh, to feel, to live. Jared stood at the edge of the landing bay, staring at the horizon. Alexa joined him, her eyes soft. She saved herself because of you, she said. No, Jared replied. She saved herself because someone gave her a chance. Alexa looked at him. What will you do now? Jared smiled faintly. Go home, he said. But this time, I'll bring something back with me. He reached into his coat and held up a small silver cube, the memory seed. I'll tell the story, he said. Not of the war. Not of the machines, but of a girl in the sand. And the food I almost kept for myself? Alexa nodded. And when they ask if it was worth it, she asked, what will you say? Jared looked up at the twin suns and whispered, it saved a planet.